Today we're thrilled to sit down with Grammy-nominated Billa Joints, a visionary music producer who's brought his unique touch to the works of J. Cole, Nelly Furtado, and so many others. From the studio to the charts, Billa Joints' journey is a masterclass in artistry, innovation, and hustle. So whether you're an aspiring producer, just a fan of music, or somebody who's looking for some serious inspiration, this is an episode you don't want to miss. Let's get into it. Play the music. Welcome to Second Story. I'm Josh Cybulski, joined as always by Corey Leckie. Corey, what's up, bud?
Hey, man, what's going on?
Why do you always wave? It's weird.
I don't know.
Does Rogan do? What is that?
It's my thing. I wave to the camera.
Okay, cool. It's kind of a boomer thing to do, but good for you. So I'm super excited for today's episode. It's been a bit since we've talked to anyone in the music industry, so I'm pretty excited about that. So joining us today is a man who's built a career in the music industry. He was a guitarist at first, and then eventually a musical director. And now over the past decade, he's flourished as a producer. He's worked with the likes of Nelly Furtado, Boss, J. Cole, 24 Karat Golden, Lil Nas X as well. I don't know if I missed anybody, but welcome to the show, Billa Joints. What's up?
What's going on, guys? Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
Yeah, man. Thanks for joining us. Real excited to talk to you today. So we are Second Story. We talk to people who have gone through, a major change in their life that sent them down a different direction. So we're really excited to hear your second story. So without further ado, the floor is yours.
Wow, where to begin? It's funny because, when you were telling me the concept of the Second Story thing, I was kind of like, it's funny because it's not like I completely switched directions. Like it was all within music for me. I always kind of knew ever since I was very, very young that music was the thing I wanted to do. I remember even playing hockey as a kid and like being on the ice and they would put music on and I would just play better. And I wasn't that good of a hockey player, to be honest. I always played like C or whatever. But my dad, who's French Canadian, who's a big hockey guy, would always notice like every time they put on music, you just play with like more energy, more aggression. I was like, I don't know what it is. It just got me pumped up. Right. So I was playing, doing piano lessons from the time I was like 8 years old. And that was kind of my introduction to playing an instrument. And I got a guitar when I was 12 because I like begged my parents basically like, please give me a guitar. Please give me a guitar. I was obsessed with like Blink-182 and punk rock at the time. I just wanted to like be Tom DeLonge basically. And they got me my first guitar, which was a Tom DeLonge Stratocaster. And that was what I learned to play on. Right away I was playing like 2-4 hours a day. And so for the first like 10 years that I played, I just wanted to be like the best guitar player ever. Like I was just obsessed with guitar. You can ask anybody that I went to high school with, they'll tell you like I always had a guitar in my hand. Like I would go to the music room and, play guitar during lunch hour and everything. It was just like practicing 6, 7, 8 hours a day. Got into Van Halen and then got into jazz and then decided to go to music school after high school. And I went to McGill and did a undergrad in jazz guitar performance there. And so by the time I was like 22, I was like a professional guitarist. I was making a living teaching guitar lessons, playing gigs, doing, different types of gigs, corporate gigs, wedding gigs, playing at bars and different jazz bands and things like that. And when I graduated, I basically got really interested in music production. And I moved back to Ottawa from Montreal. And I was living with my parents in the burbs and there really wasn't much to do. So I got this beat machine and I started just messing around trying to make beats because I love hip hop, right? I just got like, I was always like, not always, but when I was in undergrad, I got really into like the jazzy kind of hip hop, like Jay Dilla and this kind of like R&B, like Erykah Badu, D'Angelo, Jill Scott, The Roots, that kind of thing. And I just like thought it was dope. And I was like, man, how do they do some of this stuff? Like this is not something I learned in music school. This is not something you learn in guitar lessons, or anything like that. And so I just started kind of getting a beat machine and watching YouTube videos and trying to make beats. And I honestly never thought it was going to be like what it's become in terms of my career as a producer. but I just sort of loved doing it, right? So I just kept doing it. I was trying to make beats, trying to figure out how to do all this stuff, and also kind of combining it with my guitar skills, which I'd already sort of, developed. I was at that point, I was a much better guitar player than I was producer. Um, and basically, over the years that followed, I just kind of did it so much. I started working with local artists, local rappers, singers, and sending them beats. And eventually I got a couple beats on like this rapper's record when I lived in Boston, because I went to Boston and I did a master's degree in jazz guitar also. Because I wanted to live in New York when I was in my early 20s. I was like, I want to live in New York. That's like the live music mecca of the world. I gotta be there. And my way of doing that was, okay, I'm going to do a master's in Boston and then move to New York, which is what a lot of musicians do. So I went to New England Conservatory, did a master's there, and ironically, after I graduated there was when I started working with all those local artists and kind of like getting a bit of a reputation as a producer. Because there weren't a lot of people at like New England Conservatory who were like making beats, that wasn't really the vibe, it's like a conservatory, pretty like there was a classical program, there's a jazz program, yeah, I just started doing that. I moved to New York in 2018. And that was when I really started going hard on the production, when I was like working with a bunch of different local artists in New York. New York is just amazing for that. There's like so many artists, so many people trying to make it, trying to do their thing. So I was just connecting with every singer, rapper that I could. And one of my good friends, Gael George, shout out to Gael. He's the man, one of my best friends. And he's a phenomenal rapper that I think people need to know more about. But he really kind of started working very closely with me, and we kind of like built a real I don't know, like producer rapper type of connection. And we ended up doing like a whole album together. And I felt like I really sort of started to come into my own as a producer during that process, because it was really like working closely with an artist, even though it was before I'd ever worked with like a big artist. And it kind of like, led me into this thing where I was like, okay, this is like really what I want to do. Like, I love this whole process. Like, playing guitar is great, but that's just one aspect of it, and I love having control, contributing to the whole big picture, you know what I mean, of like the drums, the sonics of all the songs, how the songs flow from one to the other, going back and forth with the artist on the lyrics and everything, and so that was when I was like, okay, this is kind of like what I really want to do. It's like light bulb kind of went off. Like, all this time I've been producing sort of for fun, just kind of because I liked it and I enjoyed it. But at this moment, I kind of realized, okay, this is where I get to use all my skills in one place, right? And so that was kind of, I guess, where I sort of became like, I was like, okay, I want to be a producer. And funny enough, I guess this is where it gets sort of really interesting, is when COVID hit. I was living in New York, and I basically went back to Ottawa for what I thought would be a few months at the time, right? Everybody was like, oh, it's going to be over in a few months, and then I'll just go back to New York, right? Well, obviously, that's not what happened, right? I went back to Ottawa. I met a girl, actually, and we started dating, and she was like, oh, do you know this producer, T Minus? And I was like, oh yeah, T Minus, like, he's like a big time rap producer, he's worked with Drake and J. Cole and Nicki Minaj and all these people. She was like, oh yeah, that's like my girlfriend's boyfriend. Like, you should meet him. And I was like, yeah, like, for sure, let's do it, right? And so one day I went over there, and I kind of brought my guitar inconspicuously, like left it in the car, like in case he wanted to like work, and we had dinner, and he was super cool. And he was like, oh, yo, like, I heard you do music, did you bring a guitar? And I was like, oh, like, funny enough, I did, like,
have it in the car.
Totally just happened to have it in the car. And so I went and got my guitar, and we just immediately hit it off. We just like, we cooked up a beat, and it was just fire. We got along, and like our workflows, we just meshed. Like, it was very instantaneous, it felt like. And he was like, bro, you got to come back. We got to work. Like, what's your deal? And I was like, oh, well, technically I like still live in New York, but like I'm back in Canada for like this COVID thing. And like, I don't really know what's happening. Like, the world is in a weird place. Right. And he was like, okay, come back next weekend. So I started going there every weekend, and we started just cooking up just tons of beats. Right. And finally, at the end of the summer, he was like, yo, like, what's your deal? I want to sign you. like, can you come to Toronto? And I was like, well, shit, like, there's nothing really back for me in New York. I guess, like, I have this girl I'm seeing now. She lives in Toronto, and, like, I can just move to Toronto because I'm Canadian, right? So I was like, let's do this. You know what I mean? Let's just do it. So I up and moved to Toronto September 2020, and I've been here ever since. And T basically opened just a lot of doors for me. You know what I mean? He basically put me in the room with Nelly Furtado, with J. Cole. He's the one that introduced me and allowed me to kind of like build a relationship with those bigger artists and really kind of take things to the next level. And I got to shout him out because that's my brother, that's my guy. And I wouldn't be here if it wasn't for him. He really believed in me from day one, and like just gave me, nothing but the best opportunities to try and win and get records with these people and take stuff to the next level. And he's always had my best interest at heart. And I really think like the guy deserves his props for that, because this industry is like, not everybody's like that. There's a lot of people who are at his level who they wouldn't do something like that just because they believe in somebody's talent. A lot of it is kind of like they're looking to what can we get out of this guy,
Yeah.
And T was never like that. And so anyways, this is a very long story, I realize, but
not even close to the longest we've had.
Right. Okay, cool. But long story short, that's kind of my journey in a nutshell, and that's sort of how I ended up being able to work with a lot of those artists you mentioned, and so I guess that gives you kind of a summary of my first and second story. But I feel like in a way I can't really talk about one without talking about the other, because they are all
Of course.
music,
Yeah.
So anyways, hopefully that gives you what you need,
Yeah, absolutely. Well, there's a lot to unpack out of that. Obviously, we'll take most of the episode to do so.
Mm-hmm.
T's coming on the show next week, by the way. For
Let's go.
T doesn't know that.
He'll probably be down, honestly. Like, he enjoys this kind of thing. I should have asked him to join me.
Yeah. Oh, right. Yeah. Yeah. So I mean, it's an incredible story. There's a lot. I want to talk a lot about like mentorship and things like that. But hearing your story, it kind of fits in line with something that Corey and I have learned as we've gone through our own journeys. We actually both have backgrounds in the film industry.
Okay.
Both worked in the film industry for a very short period of time. Corey owns his own business now, does like film production, video production, that kind of thing. I am not in the business. I'm in a completely different industry. But one of the things that always amazes me when you do have sort of that artist journey, such as you had, is that we always set these goals of like, oh, I want to be this thing. And for you, it was obviously you wanted to be a guitarist. For Corey and I, we both wanted to be film directors. And, you go through and you have this one big goal, and you don't really realize that you're on a highway and you have all these off ramps that you can take. And eventually you find an off ramp that is very interesting. You're like, oh shit, like that's the one I want to take. And you do get off, and it's usually short of that original goal. And you wonder, like, am I going to go back to that one, or have I found something that's much better? And I often wonder that a lot. And for you, obviously, you took the off ramp, found something that was.
Yeah, it's funny you say that, because it's like I feel like it's a thing for me when I think about my sort of my path to where I'm at now. It was like super organic, like I never set out to like be a producer. That was not my journey at the beginning when I started playing guitar at all. I didn't even know that was like a thing when I was a kid playing guitar. I just wanted to play guitar. I was just like, look, I don't know how I'm going to make this work, but I just know that if I do anything else, I'm not going to be happy. I'm not going to be fulfilled. So I got to like find a way to make this music thing work. And over time, the production thing just gradually became more and more of what I do. And I started kind of having this realization by the time I hit 30, where I was like, oh shit, like this is who I am. Like this is what I always wanted to do. All this time I was trying to be a guitar player. It didn't feel right for me to be like a touring guitarist, like just either with my own project or like as a sideman, because I love so many different kinds of music and I pull from all different genres. And this production lane kind of allows me to explore all of that. I can go in the studio and make a Latin guitar sample one day and make like a country idea the next day, or do a rock thing the next day. It's just, I get to pull from all these different influences on the daily. and it's all creative too. Because my favorite thing is making stuff. It's not just playing songs that are already, you know, written. It's like creating something from scratch. And so being able to do that across a wide variety of genres is like really like my favorite thing. And that's when I kind of knew I found my thing. But it was not something that I like set out to achieve. It just sort of, these things came together, and then I was like, oh, this is my thing, you know. So
I think what's important though is when that thing came to you, you said yes. Like,
yeah,
you're
yeah,
like,
yeah.
yes, let's do that. Because you can easily just walk away and go, you know what, that doesn't, it's not jiving with, I wanted to be a guitar player, so I'm gonna keep going down that road, right? But the fact that you said yes to T
Mhm.
minus, especially,
Yeah,
and
it was a chance, to be honest, because I had kind of already established myself in New York and was building that lane of like, when I lived in New York, I was playing live all the time. I was playing 3-4 gigs a week. I was, you know, doing obviously, you know, on top of rehearsals, and I was teaching guitar, and it's a whole different hustle, especially New York pre-COVID. It really was that live music capital. I mean, it still is, you know, but for a while there, it kind of disappeared during COVID, and a lot of venues unfortunately didn't survive. And I'm grateful I got to experience that, because it was kind of a bucket list thing for me, like living in New York and being a musician in New York. Um, it was one of those things that like I needed to do it. And when I was 29, I moved to New York from Boston, where I had a very cushy situation. Um, I was teaching at a private school, and like I had a very comfortable situation, but I was not fulfilled, you know, like I was really like, I'm 29. Like, is this it? Like, is this, you know what I mean? Am I just going to stay? I could have, and there's nothing inherently wrong with that. But I just knew that like, for me, I was like, nah, man, like I know that like, if I don't do this, I'm going to regret this later. And I know that if I hadn't pushed myself to go to New York, I probably wouldn't have gone back to Canada during COVID, and I probably would have never met T minus. And I do think, I don't know, the universe works in mysterious ways, but I think that somehow it sort of led me to where I'm supposed to be, you know? So, yeah.
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 My dad, when I was in my early 20s and struggling, I'd always had on my bucket list to move to Vancouver and work in the film industry, and I did it, and it was a huge disaster. And I remember moving back, and I was super depressed. And my dad at one point was like, look, you know, you'll understand this because you worked in the movies, but he's like, life is not a movie. He's like, it's not just a straight line and you get to your goal. He's like, life is really a TV show where you have all these off ramps and episodes that go nowhere, you
Oh,
know, red
yeah.
herrings, all these different things. And he's like, your life's a
100%.
TV show, and you're gonna have a lot of that where you veer off direction. And I was
Oh,
like,
yeah.
yeah, I'm like, you're stupid, Dad. But I mean, he was right.
No, but it's so true, man. It's so, yeah, when you're young, you're just like, whatever. But
Yeah.
but it's so true. You can't predict it. But I'm a big believer now, especially now, because I've, you know, the way things have unfolded for me. Like I'm a big believer that, like, you know, I tell this to my students, the people that I teach and mentor, like, if you keep doing it and you really love it and you really just keep trying to get better and try to get out there and connect with other people that are like-minded, you don't know how it's going to happen, but something's going to happen eventually. You know, I met T minus when I was 31. Like, some people give up before that point. You know what I mean? What if I was thinking that thing. Have you ever seen that meme of like the guy digging the tunnel, and on the other side of the wall, there's like diamonds, and there's like one guy on top who like keeps digging, and he gets to the diamonds, and the other guy quits, and he's like, there's like, they're right on the other side. You know what I mean? And it's kind of this thing of like, if you had just kept going a little bit longer, like, you don't know what could have happened. You know what I mean? I think a lot of people give up on those things before they allow that opportunity to happen. You know, if I had set some sort of cutoff, oh, if I hit 30 and things aren't happening for me, then I'm done with this music thing, I wouldn't be where I'm at today. You know, I wouldn't have had all these opportunities and doing the things that I've been fortunate enough to do, you know? And I'm just grateful that like I knew deep down that like no matter what, like rich or poor, whatever happens, like I'm doing this music thing, man. Cause like life is too short to do some shit that you don't want to do, as far as I'm concerned. And you know, it definitely was not a, you know, linear path, you know, by any means. I moved to several different cities and had several different episodes, like you're saying, so to speak, before it finally clicked. And now I've sort of found my place. But it took a while, man. You know what I mean? It's like, I didn't know 10 years ago that I would be where I'm at now. And I definitely could have never told you it was going to go the way it went. I couldn't have made that up. So, yeah, I always jokingly tell people, I'm like, man, if you had told me there was going to be a global pandemic, I would go back to Ottawa, meet a girl on Bumble who introduces me to T minus, who introduces me to J. Cole. And now J. Cole start flying me out to Jamaica, whatever, to work with him. Bro, I could have never, made that up. You know what I mean? But that's just how it went. And I'm really just glad that I kept going, you know what I mean? And didn't quit before I got those opportunities,
That's crazy when you think about it. Like when you think about all those little pieces that just serendipitously happen, right?
Absolutely, man. It really is.
All the people that you've met, all these artists and everything, when was the most nervous you felt?
Fantastic question. Oh man. Yeah, I know. I'm trying to think the exact, there's between like two moments. Probably the first time that J. Cole flew me out to work with him was the most nerve-wracking, because the way my relationship with Cole evolved, I met him through T minus, and then basically T was the one being like, yo, you can come to the session. Like, I wasn't invited. T was just like, yo, I'm bringing you. You know what I mean? So you come, you do your thing and hang out, and like, maybe, we'll see what happens. Right. So I was like, okay, I'm going to go there. I'm going to, make an impression. And for about a year, I did this where he would bring me to sessions, and I was kind of just this white dude guitar player who was like hanging out, like kind of trying to find his place in the mix of things, and thankfully over that time I was able to kind of, I think, prove my skills, and sort of show that I was an asset. And I think about after a year, there was a moment where Cole basically hit up T minus and was like, yo, I want Steve's number. And T minus hit me up like, yo, Cole's asking for you. Is it cool if I give him your information? I'm like, dude, come on, give him my information, and
No.
and he like literally called me, and he showed up. Actually the first time, sorry, this is even before that, but he flew me out to New York. It was to work with him. This is like, these two stories are like right next to each other. And basically it was a last minute thing. I flew out with T minus. We flew out like 7 a.m. got to New York like 11 a.m. And as soon as we got to Cole's house, T minus was super tired, and he was like, man, I got to take a nap. And Cole's like, okay, there's like a couch over there. We were working at his apartment because he couldn't get Electric Lady Studios that week. And he was like, yo, Steve, like, let's write a song. And I was just like, oh shit. Like, it's just me and J. Cole, like, writing a song. Like, this is crazy, And we did this whole song, which hopefully you'll get to hear. And there was a moment during those sessions, though, where I was playing this riff that was like kind of tricky. And Cole was like, yo, I love that. Like, record that. But the problem is we weren't in a proper studio. Everyone was in the same room. And in order for me to record it, everyone had to stop talking and watch me record. And that was the moment where I had just come up with this riff, and it was this kind of involved thing, I would play it for you, but I feel like maybe that's, I don't know, I can't, but but yeah, it's, but it was like, I just came up with this thing, right? So I didn't really get time to practice. He's like, yo, everybody shut up, Steve's gonna record. And I'm like, oh fuck, like, and so the engine, this is all kind of makeshift. We're like in his apartment, and the engineer's like holding the mic up to my guitar, and everyone's just like, it's like Cole and his manager and T minus and the other producer, and they're just like, just staring at me, you know what I mean? Just kind of like, and Cole gets this really intense stare. He's just like locked in, you know what I mean? He gets so focused, man. It's like you see like Michael Jordan or somebody, like when they're LeBron, when he's like locked in, it's like that kind of like intensity. And I'm like playing this thing. And I remember the first time I tracked it, I was like, they put the, metronome comes on, in the headphones. And I'm like, and I fucked it up the first time. And I was like, okay. And I had to like really do some like, I was like, you can do this. You can play this. You can play this. You can play this. There's nobody in this room. This is not a big deal. You do this all the time. You got this. You know what I mean? Real positive self-talk, deep breaths, and I got it on the second take, you know? But I went to the bathroom after I got that take, and I was like, I was just like, oh my God. Like it was stressful, man, you know? And then I came back in and played it cool. Like nothing happened, you know? But I told T-minus later, like, man, that was so stressful. And he was like, yeah, you killed it though. That was awesome. I knew you would kill it. You know, he's always like my biggest supporter, man. It's such a blessing to have an amazing mentor like him. Yeah, man. But that was nerve-wracking. And then a couple weeks after that is when Cole showed up randomly in Toronto, and I woke up one day and I had a missed call from Cole, and he was like, yo, I booked a studio. I'm in Toronto. Like, come here. And I was just like, oh shit. Okay, let's go. And I just like, and that was like the beginning of my real like relationship with Cole, when I started, you know, really kind of, becoming, you know, having my own sort of connection with him, you know, beyond, you know, just through T-minus, you know. And, you know, he likes to kind of bring out his crew, which includes obviously T and me and a couple other producers, and sometimes other songwriters and people. And just a couple months ago, he rented out Diplo's house in Jamaica. I don't know if you guys ever saw the video online of like him giving the tour of his like estate in Jamaica. I know it's like, I am honestly, I'm like self-conscious even like saying it, because it just sounds like I feel like when I tell people this, it just sounds like I'm bragging. It just sounds like a flex, you know, but I'm like, no, it was insane. It was like the nicest place I've ever been to in my life. You know, it was just a crazy house, but he has a studio, and we just all go in different rooms and make music. And now it's cool, because I feel like I'm kind of in the crew to a degree, but at the beginning it was definitely kind of nerve-wracking, and I felt like I really had to deliver, you know, which I still do, but you know, I'm a little more comfortable now. So
when you were living in those other cities, so like New York, I think you said you were in Boston at one point.
Yeah.
Did you say there? Okay.
I was in Boston for 5 years. Yeah. And New York for 2.
Did you have any struggles when you were in there? Like, Josh at one point was practically homeless when he.
I was homeless. Yeah.
Okay. Yes. So, like, did you ever have any struggles like that where you were trying to find money or trying to make ends meet, or did it all just kind of click for you?
No, I definitely did. I wouldn't say I was homeless. I was never homeless. I never got to that point, but it was definitely ups and downs. You know, I definitely, when I graduated from New England Conservatory and I did my master's there, like, school in the States is not cheap, you know, and obviously, you know, as Canadians, we know that, you know. I think it costs less for me and my brother to each do like a 4-year degree at McGill than it was for me to do 1 2-year degree at NEC. So it's like, you know, even though I had a scholarship and stuff and it was good, but it was like I saved a bunch of money that paid for that school. But by the time I was done, I was broke. Like, I was broke coming out of NEC, you know. And I definitely had a moment. I remember that summer after I graduated where I was like, how am I going to make this work? Like, I can't pay rent past, like, you know, September, you know what I mean? It was kind of tough. And funny enough, right at the end of the summer was when I got this gig working at this private school. And at the time, I was like a saving grace. I was like, oh my God, you know, I'm 26. This, like, we're talking like bougie private school, like pre-Harvard type of thing. Like, these kids, like, oh, wow. Just to put in perspective, one of my students, I don't know if I can say this on camera, but he was Mitt Romney's grandson, right? Like, yeah. So we're talking like elite, right? There was like, what did they name the people that own the Patriots? That family, and it was their kids. The Crafts kids went to the school and everything.
Wow.
Yeah, and you know, it's very, very, maybe I won't say the name of the school, but a very big, you know, private school up to like 8th grade, I guess, or no, it went through high school actually, in Boston. And so I was like the guitar teacher. Like, I taught private one-on-one guitar lessons there, and it was like a really good hourly rate. And I had like a good 20 students a week, which, like, coming out of school being like broke as hell, is like, okay, this is like, I was so stoked when I got the gig, right? But after doing that for like 2-3 years, I was like, okay, is this gonna be it? Because like I was living in Boston and I was making a good living as a musician after a couple years there. Like I had a ton of wedding gigs, which there's a ton of wedding bands there with like Cape Cod and stuff in the summer and corporate gigs. And so I was doing gigs, sometimes 2-3 gigs in a weekend, and then teaching during the week. Like I was cushy, things were good. I was 28, 29, but I also wasn't really doing anything creative, and I was kind of like, man, like this is cool and all, and I know I'm like doing music, but I started feeling like, man, this is not really what I want to do. This is not what I envisioned. You know what I mean? And so when I moved to New York when I was 29, everybody thought I was crazy because I just ditched everything. Like I didn't have a job in New York lined up. I didn't have anything. It was just, I knew that I couldn't stay any longer. And I was like, I got to move to New York before I'm 30. That was my cutoff. I was like, okay, just do it. And so I'd saved up some money. And my parents were like, you're crazy. You're giving up this cushy situation in Boston with all this, and you're still doing music. Like, and I was like, yeah, you guys don't understand. It's not just about like playing wedding gigs and teaching private school kids who don't really, for the most part, really care. They don't really want to learn guitar. It's kind of just like an easy class for them, or whatever. And so I just took the leap and I moved to New York, and I had nothing there. I started going to jam sessions. That was a struggle for sure. The first year that I was in New York was tough because it was like I was just grabbing any gig I could, and when you're new in New York, there's so much competition. There's so many people that are great musicians and great players. It's like you're competing with the best of the best, and there's so many. And so I did like a weird after school program where I was teaching kids music, but then I also had to talk about like global warming and shit that I have like no expertise in. It was like super weird. So I'd be like, let's like watch an episode of Planet Earth, and like then we can do some music. And I don't know. It was
this Al Gore video.
Yeah, exactly. It was super bizarre, but I was just doing whatever I could to make ends meet. And it was also like, I was living with roommates who were thankfully also musicians, and so we kind of had that understanding. But it was, that first year was tough because there was a lot of times where I was just eating through my savings and just like not really making any money. And then finally, by the end of the first year of New York, I was kind of able to like right the ship and sort of start making some money again. But it's been very up and down for me. I feel like as far as financially, I'm in a better place now, but I'm not rich by any means. People think just because I've worked with J. Cole or some of these people, like, oh, you got nominated for a Grammy, you must be. I'm like, somebody said to me the other day, oh, what do you mean? What are you doing here at this bar? You got nominated for a Grammy. Did you fall out of the private jet or something? And I was like, people have this whole idea that like, it's like, it's like, it's not how it works. You know what I mean? Like, it's like, I'm still working. I'm still doing my teaching business. I'm still playing gigs to pay my bills. Yeah, I've gotten some money from these records and things, which is good. But the real money only comes in when you start getting like big songs, like I've had some album cuts, but I haven't got any big singles or anything yet. You know what I mean? So in that sense, I still feel like I'm very much on the come up as a producer. You know what I mean? Like I need to do like a Mood, 24 karat gold, and a song that everybody knows. You know what I mean? Those are the songs that really change lives, but at the same time, like I'm super grateful that this year I've been lucky to have a lot of big moments in my career. And yeah, man, what can I say? It's been an up and down journey, but thankfully now we're on the up, so.
There's a lot of parallels between the music business and the film business, but
Oh, for sure.
I remember having an eye-opening moment when I was in Vancouver and going to a party, and there was this guy there who was actually working at the party as a waiter, and I recognized him. I won't say his name or what Canadian TV show he was on, but I recognized him from the show, and I was like, damn, that guy must have fallen on hard times. And I remember one of my buddies being like, no, dude, he works. Like that guy gets acting gigs, but he lives in Canada and there's no money in Canadian TV. I was like, oh shit, that sucks. And then I was like, oh wait, that's what I'm going to be working in, is Canadian TV. Like I'm not going to have any money either. Damn, that sucks.
Yeah, no, it's not a like cut and dry thing, just because you're associated with a big artist or whatever. you know, you don't just suddenly become, rich. You know, it's especially as producers, it's like you know, you make money from publishing and royalties. That's where the big money comes from, and those are primarily generated when you get big records that are played a lot on the radio, played a lot in TV commercials, or maybe, yeah, they get synced in a movie or something.
Mm.
But you can make a living. I mean, there's so many different types of producers. You can do it many different ways. But I'm lucky that I've been able to, since I'm a musician and a producer, I've been able to like teach and do my own business in that regard, play gigs, and then also produce. And that's how I'm able to sort of make a living doing all these things. And, you know, I don't intend to really stop doing any of those things. I'm just, I'm just trying to get a hit, man. That's the next step for me, you know.
Yeah.
Got my eyes on that goal, so
Nice.
yeah.
I want to go back a little bit to your time in Boston. So
Mhm.
there's a lot to unpack from that we do talk about in this show. One of the things that I've mentioned enough that it's probably going to annoy the people who listen to this show, but I always say that a paycheck, like a steady paycheck, is like a drug, and every 2 weeks you just get that hit, and it's really hard to get off of that drug. Corey's managed to do it with his business, like
Yeah.
moving from the corporate world, and you obviously managed to do it too. But oh man, it's a hard thing.
Oh,
Was there a
for sure.
moment where you were there in Boston, like either a series of moments or one particular moment where you're like, yeah, shit, I can't do this. Like that's sort of my breaking point.
Man, that's a great question. Is there a specific moment, like an aha moment type of thing?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Um, well, yeah, I mean, I've had a few of these over the course of my life when it comes to music. Um, in Boston, though, I think it was like really, you know what it was? It was that I taught at this school for 2-3 years, and they loved me there, and they treated me great. For the record, they were awesome. I no complaints about the school itself. I got along with everybody. The faculty was great. The kids were mostly great. They were pretty hilarious because I was doing one-on-one classes with these kids who were like, 14, and it was just like they would tell me about what's going on in school and stuff, and it was pretty hilarious. I had a good relationship with the students. Some of them actually have even messaged me since, being like, hey man, it's so awesome to see what you're doing, and like I remember when I took guitar lessons. One kid's messaged me and was like, I didn't really take lessons that serious, but it's awesome that you're like doing well. Like, I was like, hey, yeah, I remember you. Like, yeah, I think the moment came really in my third year at this school where I just realized, looking around me, that there was a lot of people who had been there for a very long time, who I think, like you said, had sort of fallen, maybe, I don't want to say fallen victim, but maybe got comfortable with that sort of paycheck that you get. And I could see pretty clearly that like they weren't all happy, like they weren't all fulfilled, and I was like, is this gonna be me? Like, you know what I mean? Like if I stay here. And the school had actually given me an incentive at the end of that year. They had offered me like a contract to like stay on the campus, so I would have like not had to pay rent, and they would have given me like like a extra classes or something. So it would have been even cushier than my current situation. And it was like this kind of crossroads. It was like, okay, I either go to New York and I'm like broke again and just like living off savings, but I'm in New York and like doing the thing, or I stay here and get like even more settled in Boston, which in my mind was like makes it even harder to leave.
For sure.
And so at that moment, again, I was 29, and I was just like I was weighing it, and I just, no matter how much I thought about the offer, I was just like, I can't do it. Like, I can't do it. Like my physical body, I feel like I've always been a pretty intuitive person. And I've always had a strong intuition for like knowing what's right for me. And I just knew like, I can't do this, man. Like I can't, if I take that, I'm going to be here in 10 years, 15 years. I'm going to be looking back on this, like that was my chance and I missed it, And, Yeah, a lot of people treated me like I was crazy at that time, to be honest. Like, a lot of people was like, it was like, what the hell are you doing? Like moving to New York? Like, is this crazy? Do you have a job? What do you mean you don't have a job? Like, da da da. And I'm like, look, man, I don't know. Like, I'm just gonna figure it out. Like, I had a certain confidence. Maybe it's in retrospect, it even sounds kind of crazy to me, but it was more youthful confidence of like, I don't know. I lived in Montreal for 4 years. I lived in Boston. I'd been able to like move to a different country. And I was kind of like, I had confidence in myself to figure it out. I was like, I'm just going to go. I already have a bunch of friends in New York. I'm just going to do it. And that's what I did. Like I moved there. I started going to jam sessions like every night, just meeting everybody. And before you know it, I started getting called for gigs, started working with different artists. Oh yeah, I was a producer too. I started pushing the producer thing. Oh, you're a singer? I got a studio at my house. They would come to my apartment and we would like cook up in my bedroom, uh, which is so crazy. Now I have a proper studio. But I was bringing artists and singers. Like sometimes I had 4 or 5 people in my bedroom in Brooklyn, like recording music, it's just like, but I was so happy in New York. Like I was so fulfilled doing that and like making half as much money as I was in Boston and like living with 2 roommates who were my good friends, thank God, who could tolerate all the music. But it was really that moment. Yeah. Like where I just looked around. It was like, man, I'm 29. If I take this offer, I don't want to stay in Boston. I knew I didn't want to stay in Boston. I was comfortable, but I was like, is this all life is, man? Like, is this, I don't know. Like, is it all just about being comfortable and like, nah, like, there's like, I was like, I'm too young for this, man. Like I'm too young to just be like, no, I'm just going to take the paycheck and just ride it out. I've always believed like, look, if I want to do that, I can do that since I teach guitar and I've never had a problem getting students and having like a business in that regard. I was like, I could always just teach guitar, like worst case. I could always just like do my own thing teaching guitar. But while I'm young, like that's the time to chase this stuff. You know what I mean? Like if when I'm 45, if I want to just like hang it up and teach guitar, then cool, I can do that, but I have the qualifications, I have the degrees and stuff. And so, but in my 20s, I was, still now a little less. So I feel like I'm a little more chilled out, but in my 20s, I was super restless. Like I was just like, go, go, go. I got to go to New York. I got to go to Boston. My parents will tell you like, this guy was like, I was never going to stay in Ottawa. You know what I mean? There was no way. I was itching to get out of there. You know what I mean? And so,
Yeah.
So yeah, man, I don't know. I maybe that's not a specific moment, but it was just kind of looking around me and seeing like, okay, this is going to be my life. It's going to be more of the same. Yes, I'll be comfortable, but will I be fulfilled? And will I also know what my potential is? Because I'm always like, the reason I do this shit is not like, it's not about getting rich or like making a lot of money. That would be great, but it's because I want to see what I'm capable of. You know what I mean? I've known for ever since I was a kid that I have what it takes. And I feel like now I'm just starting to show that I was right. You know what I mean? In a way. And and I'm just like, I just want to see how far I can take it, man. You know what I mean? Like that's my main motivation is like leave nothing on the table. When I die, I want to be like, okay, man, I did everything I could. I took it as far as I could. You know what I'm saying? And that's really kind of how I think of it. This gets almost into like a more philosophical conversation, which I don't know if that's where you want to go with it, but I'm pretty like, I think about these things, I'm very much like, I'm motivated. This is kind of out of nowhere maybe, but like I was telling this to one of my students, like there's this book called the top 5 regrets of the dying, which sounds very, dark. I know I'm not trying to take it there, but it was written by this woman who was like a hospice nurse, and so she was dealing with these patients who were on their way out basically, and she got to know a lot of them very well and ended up making this book about the top 5 regrets of people who are basically terminally ill. And the number one thing is something that I really hold very dear to my heart is that they said that they wish they lived a life truer to themselves and not a life that other people expected of them. And to me, that's always been like my biggest motivation, is just like, I know that this is what I was put here to do. And I don't know how exactly I know, but I've always known really deep down that like this music thing is my thing. And I just want to see how far I can take it. That's what it comes down to, and do it on my terms, So, yeah.
We'll definitely get into the philosophical thing. I could see Corey itching.
not to get too deep, but
nah, man,
we can't help it, but
that's what we do on this show.
That is what we do.
It's all
great, man. I'm all for it, because for me, it is a really deep thing. It's like, it's not about money. Like, I'm not in this to make money. Like, I do music because I love music, because I have to do music. I don't think of it as something that like is my job. Yes, it is my job. It is how I make money, but I like wake up every day wanting to make music. You know what I mean? The only thing that I hope for in my career, because in a way I already feel like I'm living my dream, is that I can get to a point where I can just focus more and more on just creating music, because that's my favorite thing. I enjoy teaching and I enjoy playing gigs and stuff, but like, honestly, I would be very happy just locked in the studio, like 10 hours a day, just creating all the time, So getting to that point is like, that's what my motivation is. But money or no money, like, I'm already kind of doing that, So in a way, I feel like I've already won, and that's the beauty about doing something that you really, really love, is like, cool, the money will make it that much better. But in a way, like, I'm already doing it, you know what I mean? And the reward is in the work, So anyways,
yeah, the money's the bonus.
Yeah, exactly. It's just the gravy, man. It's the cherry on top, So
yeah, I remember talking to this guy who's probably the most financially successful person that I've ever met. And I asked him, like, what allowed you to reach your full potential, whereas I haven't, because I don't believe that I have yet. And he said he was smoking a cigarette. As he said, he's like, well, I got real fucking comfortable with being uncomfortable. And I remember when he said that, I was like, oh, I'm not comfortable being uncomfortable at all. And I was like, okay, that's something that, like, philosophically I have to change within me, because I'm way too comfortable being comfortable.
Dude, that's so real. That's like, and that's the thing, is like, I've always had the mindset that like no amount of like comfort or stability is worth sacrificing doing what I truly love to do. Cause like, what's the point? My thing is always like, you see the guys who are like billionaires, like, what are they doing? They're not doing shit. They're just doing the things that they want to do. They're doing the things that they're passionate about, and they get other people to do all the things that they have to deal with. You know what I mean? And I'm like, well, what if you could just bypass that and just do the thing that you want to do in the first place, and just figure out how to make that work? You know what I mean? It's not always that simple, and it doesn't mean you're not going to have to make sacrifices. But I was always like, I could never like see myself working in an office or doing 9 to 5. Anybody who knows me knows, like, man, this guy would be a terrible employee. Like, he's just like, I'm not like, yeah, people told me like, bro, I can tell you've never had a regular job. You know what I mean? Because I'm just like, I don't know. I like to just do my own thing. You know what I mean? And so, but I just always like, okay, so what if I have the nice apartment and a sick car and all this comfort, and like, then I got to go do this thing every day that I don't enjoy to keep maintaining this thing. And then, what happens with those things is you get comfortable, and your nice apartment is just your apartment now. And your nice car is just your car now. It's just, you just get used to it, man. It becomes normal, And then what? You're still stuck doing this thing you don't want to do. Like, how is that worth it? In my mind, that's my reasoning, at least. Some people might disagree with this, and to each their own. I have no beef with that, but I just, in my mind, I was like, so what if I got to be like broke in New York? If I'm doing music, like, that's cool with me. Like, the main thing is that I'm doing the thing that I'm passionate about. As long as I'm not sacrificing that, I'm good. And so that's why I was able to deal with a lot of those other discomforts. I feel like having, sometimes not having money, or not knowing when the next check was going to come in, or just like living with new, roommates and in a tiny apartment in New York, and you got like roaches, and like, it's just like the struggle is kind of real, but then I would go and I would play, and I would get out there, and I'd be like, man, like, I'm so glad that I get to do this. You know, it's you know, it's definitely not always easy, man. But I don't think I've ever really had, yeah, like that much trouble being uncomfortable. To be honest, I think that is a big part of it. You know what that guy said.
You got to wonder where that comes from, because like I'm actually very, very similar. Like I did do the 9 to 5 thing for about 8 years. I was in the most corporate of corporate places you can be.
Okay.
And I got extremely depressed. I was the same way. Like it everything in me was saying, no, I know what I'm supposed to be doing, and this isn't it. And that struggle, just like that mental struggle inside me, it just became this, it spiraled downward and downward until I was just completely almost catatonic.
Yeah.
So, but I was able to get out of that, you know, push out of it, do my own thing, get to that discomfort zone. And now I'm in a good spot.
Yeah.
So,
that's amazing.
I just wonder what you think. 'Cause I feel like we get conditioned, you know, through school, with our parents, with our peers.
Let's have this conversation.
Yeah.
Oh, this is something I'm very passionate about, man. It really is close to my heart, especially growing up in a city like Ottawa. I gotta say, you got a lot of government jobs, and you got a lot of that culture, which again, I'm not trying to knock anybody. I really am not, because I do think, to be fair, this is my perspective as a creative, as an artistic individual. You know, I think if you're not so inclined, then maybe that's fine for you. You know what I mean? And maybe that works for you. You know, for a lot of people, they don't have that itch that maybe you and I have. You know what I mean? And so it's fine. They just want to like get their check and go home and be with their family. And that's their priority. And I think that's a beautiful thing. I'm all for that. You know, I don't ever want to sound like I'm knocking that grind, because that's what most people do, you know, and that's great. But you also got to know if it doesn't work for you, you know, and you got to be honest about that. And I think if you're a creative person, then that type of monotonous grind of the same schedule, same things, day in, day out, to be honest, for someone like myself, there's few things that sound more painful than that. That's torture to me. I can't do it. The way my schedule is now, it's absolute chaos. It's all over the map, but I love it, man. I wouldn't have it any other way. You know what I mean? Sometimes I'm up all night working, and other times it's very like sporadic. And then it's like, hey man, you need to fly to this place tomorrow. And then it's like, okay, we just, you know, it can get crazy, but I love that, man. It keeps life interesting. You know, I don't know, but that's just me at the end of the day, you know? So,
well, I don't think it is just you. I think it's a lot of people. Like you said, it's not for everyone. And
no,
I guess you got to ask yourself, Josh asks me this all the time, who do you want designing your life?
Right.
You or someone else, right? And for us, me and Josh, as we're kind of going through this journey, we're answering that question, and it's 100% us. Like,
it's kind of this pervasive thing, which I face this a lot too, where it was like, oh, well, like you're going to do music. Like, what are you going to do if it fails? Like, what if it doesn't work out? Like this constant fear thing of like, oh, what are you going to, you know, you better have a backup plan. You know, what's your backup plan? And I'm like, I don't fucking know. Like, I'm just going to do music. Like, I mean, I'm going to figure it out. That was my attitude, which maybe seems a little crazy, but I was like, I guess my backup plan is like, I'll teach guitar, like whatever. I'll do, you know, wedding gigs and that. I can always go back to doing that. But like, let me chase this, because I feel that I have more in me, you know? And I look back on like where I was 5 years ago. I'm like, man, I'm so glad that I chased this thing, because like, now I'm in a place where I'm like, I'm seeing that like, no, I really can do this. Like, I really can operate with people on the highest level in this industry, and they dig what I'm doing. Like, they think I'm dope. You know what I mean? So I'm like, okay, like that intuition that I had was right. And all those people, you know, who were like, oh, you know, what are you going to do? What if it doesn't work? Like, they were wrong, man. You know, it's not even that they were wrong. It's just that they, you know, they were operating from a place of like fear. And I think that when you're doing something like this, you have to come more from a place of like faith and belief in yourself. You know what I mean? And you can't, your parents don't always know what's best for you. The society doesn't always know what's best for you. Your intuition is there for a reason. I believe that thing is, I'm not really religious, but it's kind of like the universe is whispering to you through that thing, like, nah, man. And if you ignore it for a long time, like it sounds like you went through that, you start feeling it. And that was kind of how I was feeling at the end of my time in Boston. Like, it was just like, yeah, this thing in me is like growing. And if I don't go, it's going to start eating me from the inside, and I couldn't have that happen,
Yeah. I was at that spot. I let the fear run me for a while. And then eventually I just got unafraid. I was like, what I was fearing more was the consequences of where I was going. You know what I mean? Like,
right.
It was going to get real bad, right? If I didn't.
What I always think about when it comes to this too is like, there's a couple quotes. Like, one is that Jim Carrey said, like, he was like, he was talking about his dad, I think, who was like, I forget what his dad did, but he kind of like took a job. It was a whatever job, but it like paid the bills type of thing. Right. And then he got laid off randomly after working for this company for like 30 years and like just got totally screwed over, And Jim Carrey was like, at that moment, I realized, like, you can fail at something and it's not even his own fault. You can fail at something that you don't even want to do. So you might as well fail at the thing that you do want to do. You know what I mean? I always thought of it like that too. Like, man, what's the worst if I go for this thing and I fail? That's what I tell younger people too. Like my students, I'm like, yo, your 20s is the time to just like go for it, man. Cause like, who cares? You fall on your face, you're 25. Who cares? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You move back in with your parents and figure it out. Like, I don't know. You know what I mean? Like, how bad is it really going to be? It's a lot different when you're 45, you got a family, you can't really be taking those same type of risks, And so I feel like when you're young, it's that time. And I guess I was fortunate enough to kind of think like that or have that mindset. I've always been pretty into philosophy and just like, that kind of thing. And so I always had the mindset of like, man, I got to do this thing. And if it fails, it fails. But at least I know I tried and I can be at peace with that. It's like my dream was living in New York. I don't live in New York anymore. But since I did live in New York for 2 years and I experienced that and I was able to cross that off my bucket list, so to speak, I feel like now I can be at peace with not living in New York because I'm doing something I really enjoy in a great city. I love Toronto. In a way, it's a lot like New York. I do still miss things about New York, but it was a thing that I'm really glad that I got to do. You know what I mean? Even if it's not going to be exactly where I am for the rest of my life, And if I hadn't taken that risk, it would have never happened. And I still to this day, I'd probably be like, oh, I wish I lived in New York. What would it be like living in New York? You know what I mean? Now I'm at peace with it. I'm like, okay, I've done it, and it was amazing. It's also extremely challenging. It's never how you imagine it too. So I think when you actually experience it, you're like, oh, okay. I love having a parking spot, like that's awesome about Toronto, like not having to like move my car every single day and like not know where I'm going to park. So anyways, but yeah, man, you got to trust that. You got to trust your gut, I really believe that.
When I was planning to move to Vancouver, I just finished film school. I was working this factory job, and I hated it. I was just looking to get out to Vancouver. I couldn't wait to do it. And I remember one of the last days that I was working there, one of the guys there was like, "Do you worry it's not going to work out?" And I was like, "No, not really." And he's like, "What are you going to do if it doesn't work out?" And I was like, "Well, I'll probably end up back here." And I remember just saying that, and it was like I felt like such a douche saying it. I was like, "Oh man, that was a real asshole thing to say." But in reality, it's like jobs are everywhere. Like if and Vancouver didn't work out for me, and I didn't end up back there, but I ended up at a job similar. I was like, that was the safety net, and I had a choice to stay there in the safety net or go take a risk and end up back there. And I think probably for you, and I think for Corey too, like one of the things that people have a real allergy to is actually betting on themselves. And obviously you did that by giving up your cushy gig. Corey too, like leaving a comfortable job to go try to start his own business. Like that people don't make bets on themselves like that. They'll make a whole bunch of other bets with their life, but that one, for some reason, people are really fearful of. And I think it goes back to what Corey was saying about like, people are kind of scared. They sort of self-sabotage. They're worried about like, what if I do actually get there, or it's scary to get there, or there's resistance I'm going to face. Did you find that or no?
Oh yeah, absolutely, man. I think that's kind of the way I feel like, I don't want it to sound whatever, but I do think, yeah, most people I think struggle with betting on themselves. I think I don't think that we grow up. I don't know. It's funny. I think that the only people that I've really encountered in my life that encourage me to really bet on myself are people who also bet on themselves. You know what I mean? Because I do think there's a lot of, and maybe nobody talks about this, but like the people who don't bet on themselves, they don't want you to bet on themselves, on yourself. You know what I mean? Secretly, there can be insecurity there. They can be, oh, well, they weren't able to do it, so why should they do it? And sometimes those dynamics can be kind of problematic. I've definitely encountered that, I've always been pretty confident in myself. Like I've always been like, I can do it. Like I've always believed that I can do it. Sometimes people thought that was arrogant. Sometimes we're like, oh, dude, you're so arrogant. You're so full of yourself. And I heard that and I'd be like, okay, but I'd rather be that than like not believe in myself. I'd rather be like so sure that I'm like, this is going to work. You look at like, say what you will about Kanye West, man, but like, the guy believes in himself like nobody else I've ever seen,
Yeah.
And, I don't agree with a lot of things he's done over the years, but the guy is a musical genius, and he's achieved things that most artists, anyone in music could only dream of, and that's not a coincidence that someone who believes in themselves to that degree is able to achieve on that level. I think that most of the people I see, I look at people who inspire me beyond music too, Kobe Bryant or Michael Jordan, or, like, I don't know, Obama, or, whoever it is, like, these guys, like, there's this deep thing. And I feel like they're in touch with that thing that we were talking about earlier, where like, they know this is like what they're meant for. And they just know but they also don't underestimate it. That's the thing too. Cause betting on yourself is one thing, but you got to know the work it takes, because it's hard. The cushy thing is like when you're doing the 9 to 5 thing, you can kind of just clock out. In my work, you can't clock out. I'm on call 24/7. Like I could get called to do a session right now. Like literally that could happen. It has happened in situations, many times. And it's happening where I get home from working at my studio at 1 a.m. and I get a call from T-, yo, Cole's here. We're at Drake's studio. Can you pull up right now? We need guitar on this song. I'm like, hop back in my car, drive out to the studio, get there 2 a.m. They're like, get in the booth, record for like an hour, do all this stuff. Okay, man, thanks. Boom, boom, boom. And I'm like, that's it. Like, I don't know what's happening with the song. I don't know what's going on. It's just like, that's just how it is sometimes. You know what I mean? But I love that. And I'm prepared to make those sacrifices because this is what I really want to do with my life. But if you want to just clock out at 5 p.m. and go home and do that thing, then this life is not for you. You know what I mean? It's I'm sure you understand too, if you're running your own business, it's like, there's a constant to-do list of like, you have to almost decide, okay, I'm going to take this time for myself. Because if you don't, you could easily just keep working all the time until you're just burnt out,
Like you don't often take those times because you're crazy busy.
Right? It's hard. It's a never ending. It's a never ending grind, especially when you're trying to build and you're trying to make it. Like I don't really feel like I've made it. I've had some big milestones this year, which I'm super grateful for, and I'm it's a little surreal, to be honest, but I still feel like I'm so on the come up and there's so much more for me to do. Even though I've technically kind of been doing music for like 20 years, like it's only in the last few years that I've really broken into like the music industry side of things and been able to work with these bigger sort of world renowned artists, and I'm just like, it's only 4 years is nothing, man. This is the first year that I've really seen some success in that regard. It took 3 years of building with T- and flying out to LA and New York and doing sessions and da-da-da. Like the J. Cole record that I did, this is kind of a funny story. Maybe this is like a side, you know, but we were in New York like summer 2023, and we were booked at Electric Lady Studios in New York. That's where he likes to work in New York. And I was literally sitting on the couch playing this guitar riff on this. I got a guitar right here. There we go. This guitar. This little riff that I came up with, right? And Cole's manager walks in. He's like, "Yo, what is that?" And I was like, "I don't know. It's just this little thing I came up with." He's like, "Yo, you got to put that on this song." And I was like, "Okay, like what song?" You know? And he's like, "Yo, come here. He's like, yo, pull up Sticks and Stones. Pull up Sticks and Stones." So they pull up the song, and they're like, go in there, record that." So I go and record this guitar track, and they're like, "Oh, that's fire! Oh my god!" The Cole already had his vocals and everything on it. Like the song was basically done. They just added this guitar to it, and he was like, "Yo, that's fire! This like really brings the record together, whatever." I'm like, "Okay, cool." Never heard about it again. 9 months later, I get a call from T-Minus. He's like, I'll never forget it because it was my first Cole record. He calls me. It was like Thursday morning. I'm waking up, having coffee, waking up at noon like I usually do, and having coffee. He calls me and he's like, "Yo, who's your lawyer?" And I'm like, I don't know. What's going on? He's like, "Cole's dropping an album tonight, and you're on this song." And I'm like, "What song?" He's like, "Sticks and Stones." And I was like, "What song is it?" Like I'd forgotten the song. You know, it was like 9 months before. You know, and I did this like one random day. Sure enough, the song drops. The album drops. The song's on there. I'm like, "Oh my god, this is my first J. Cole placement," and now that album is nominated for a Grammy, and all because I was just playing a riff on a couch, and Cole's manager just happened to hear it. You know, it's so much about being in the right place at the right time, and that's why it's like you have to just put yourself out there, man. You have to just like, you got to be good at what you do, but you also got to like just as much as possible. Just like I was in New York going to all these jam sessions, just because you never know where that's going to come from, but I believe if you have that faith and you really are great at what you do and you really are about your craft and you really put yourself out there, all you need is one person to like change your life. For me, that was T-Minus, and it came, later than I expected, but late is better than never,
Yeah.
So, you know what I mean? It's just like, I don't know. Anyways, that was an aside, but I do think it's funny how that record came to be, and like to now be nominated for a Grammy because of that is just so like, just like the story with how I met T-Minus. It's like, what? Like, you can't make this shit up. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
I was having this conversation with one of my buddies the other day about the shorts that we do for the show. We do a lot of shorts for YouTube, and they get a lot, like way more traction than any of our actual episodes.
Mm-hmm.
But what we're talking about, he's like, "You ever get embarrassed or like worried that your videos are bad?" And I was like, "Dude, all the videos are bad." I'm like, "But all it takes is one good one."
Yeah.
I'm just out there making lottery tickets, dude. Like every video I make is a lottery ticket, and that's
like
you.
What I do. That's exactly what I do, man. We make records, and we don't know if they're necessarily going to be hits or not. We don't know if they're going to go. You could make a record. It's funny because I have conversations like this with T-Minus where he's like, "Bro," because sometimes especially now, I've had a good year, but like there were times over the last 4 years where I was kind of like, "Man, like nothing's happening. Like I'm doing all this work. I'm making all this stuff. I'm sending it to all these producers. I'm getting in every session I can. Like nothing's happening." I was frustrated. Like it was like not moving as quickly as I thought it would. I thought, to be honest, I was kind of naive when I first signed with T-Minus. I thought like, oh, I'm going to sign with T-Minus, and in like a year, I'm going to have like hits with like Drake and J. Cole, and I'm going to be driving a Lambo, and like life is going to be amazing. And it just obviously doesn't work like that. You know what I mean? I didn't know. I was like, I don't know. This is T-Minus. I figure he's just like, he sends a beat and Drake does a song to it. And then I realized it's not that simple at all. It's hard even for him, a guy who at his level, he has to send out tons of material, go through tons of beats for an artist to finally find one that they like. And then if they like it, will they record to it? And then if they record to it, will it actually come out? And then if it comes out, will it actually be a hit?
Yeah.
Right.
He's been doing this a long time, and he's had several hits over the years. But you know, the guy, for every hit that we know from him, there's probably there's at least 10 or 20 songs you didn't know he produced, and then there's probably hundreds of beats that never came out. You know what I mean? And it really is that lottery thing, man. You just got to keep showing up and keep doing the work, and you really have to have a lot of faith. You know, if you don't believe that it can work, then it probably won't work. You know, it's that's what it kind of comes down to, right? It's that thing. It's like, whether you believe you can do something or you can't, you're right either way. You know,
Yeah,
I
sure.
really believe that. It's like, if you don't think you can do something, you can't do it. You won't be able to do it. But if you think you can, and it might seem crazy at the time, it might seem impossible, then it becomes that much more possible. But it starts really with, like, you just have to believe, like, allow yourself to believe that that is a possibility. Why not? You know what I mean?
Sure.
Like, why not? Like, why would you? Oh, I can't. Sometimes I meet people and it's like this, oh, like, I could never, you know, I could never. I'm like, why? What do you mean you could never? Like, why do you have this idea about yourself that you are, like, not capable of great things? Like, who taught you that? You know, but sometimes I think, you know, people struggle with that idea of, like, oh, I'm not meant to do anything special, or I'm not special. You know, I'm not not that I am, or that anyone, but you know what I mean? Like, I'm not capable of great things. It's like, why not? Like, that's a self-limiting belief, you know? And as long as you believe that, you're actually right. That's the sad part, you know?
Yeah.
And so it starts with kind of like changing that mindset of being like, no, I actually can do it. I'm going to allow myself to believe that it is possible. And it doesn't mean it's going to be easy. Doesn't mean it's just going to happen. Doesn't mean there's no work involved. But if you shut that possibility off, then it's guaranteed not to happen. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I always think if you stop trying, then it's definitely not going to happen. If I stop making music today, I'm definitely never going to get that hit. You know what I mean?
Right.
But if I keep doing it, I might. I believe I will. It's just a matter of time, and, you know, I might already have it. It just hasn't come out. That's what T Minus tells me too. He's like, bro, you might already have the song that's going to change your life. You just don't know it yet. Because we do songs sometimes. Like, there's songs I did with J. Cole 2 years ago, haven't come out. Hopefully they do. You know, knock on wood. But yeah, it's like putting shots up, man. You just got to keep taking them. You know, eventually something's going to go in. You know, so
little Steph Curry.
Yeah, exactly. Little Steph Curry. The funny part about for you is that, like, if you had let's just say you had a critic, somebody who was like, that won't work. You could put out 100 songs. They might be right 99 times, but on that 100th time, they're extremely wrong. And if that's your hit, they got it real wrong, even though they were right 99% of the time.
It only takes one, man. It only takes one to change your life. So why not keep trying? You know what I'm saying? It's just like, if you get one hit, like a big hit, like T Minus has had several in his career, you know, Middle Child with J. Cole, or Moment for Life with Nicki Minaj, or Swimming Pools with Kendrick Lamar, you know, like, these are all big songs that, like, people who know these artists, like, they know those songs, you know, those are like, they're defining songs. In fact, like Swimming Pools and Moment for Life are kind of like the songs. They were like the first two hits for Kendrick and Nicki Minaj, you know? So those are songs that kind of put them on the map, you know? Those are like iconic songs. Like, you know, he's still getting paid from songs like that he did. Those are like 15 years old, you know? And it's like, he told me, you know, when he did that song with Kendrick, like, he didn't know it was going to turn into what it turned into. Kendrick wasn't the artist that we know now. You know, he was a new artist, and this was his first studio album. He didn't know that this song was going to be the massive, like, hit off of this record, but that's what happened, you know? And, yeah, you have to have this faith. And every producer that I know talks about this kind of thing, because it's like, we all kind of have to support each other and have this mentality of, like, you know, just keep going, you know? And there's so many stories of producers who, you know, they were in their mom's basement making beats, and then boom, they got a record with Drake or whatever, like a single with Drake or something. And all of a sudden, boom, it just goes 0 to 100, you know? So yeah, man, it's it's really important that you believe in yourself and that and that's also important that you just love the process, because like I said, my mindset is that like, since I love making music so much and I just love doing it, it's like everything else that comes with it is just an extra win. I'm happy as long as I'm able to create, you know what I mean? I make music every day. I have thousands of samples and ideas that I've recorded that I send to people, I send to producers. Most of them don't turn into anything. But if one of them lands in the right place at the right time, it's like all of a sudden it's all worth it, you know? So you have to keep that in your mind rather than, because there's times where I get discouraged too, where I'm like, man, nothing's happening. Nothing's happening. But I don't know. Maybe something is happening. There's very, very poor communication in the music industry. Nobody tells each other what the hell is going on. So, you know, for all I know, it's like you could have a record with Justin Bieber like about to come out and no one's told you yet, you know? And then that happened to my friend. My friend is a writer on Texas Hold'em, the Beyonce song, you know, which is nominated for like a couple Grammys. And it was like, you know, one of the big, I think it was nominated for Song of the Year. Yeah. You know, he's a writer on Texas Hold'em. I was talking to him after that song dropped. He was like, dude, I had no idea this was happening. And like, she dropped it like the night of the Super Bowl. And he was like 2 days before, they hit me up like, yo, who's your lawyer? Kind of like with the Cole thing with me, like, who's your lawyer? Beyonce's dropping this song you did like 2 years ago. He's like, what the hell? Like, what song? Like, what are you even talking about? You didn't even know, you know what I mean? And it's just crazy to hear these stories, but that's how it goes in the music industry. It's just like nothing happens until it happens, and then it all kind of avalanche, you know, happens at once, you know. So yeah,
Crazy.
it's a crazy world for sure, you know.
You hear that a lot with success, that people only see sort of like, they always call it like a meteoric rise, like just straight to the top, but they don't see the years or often decades that went into actually making that climb. They just see like, oh wow, look, overnight success. That's like the common.
Yeah, exactly.
Look at that overnight success.
No, I saw a thing on Instagram last week that was like, it was really cool, where it showed all the nominees for Best New Artist at the Grammys and how long they'd actually been making music. And it was like the average was like 7 to 10 years. Like they've all been doing this for a while. Sabrina Carpenter, you know, one of the biggest artists of the year. This is like by far her breakout year, you know, 2 major hits, number ones, Please, 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 and Espresso. She's been making music for like 11 years, man. It's like she's Best New Artist. Like, it's so crazy when you think about it. It's just like, that's not a new artist at all, but
no,
that's, you know, this is the year that she became like a real breakthrough. And that's, I guess, how the Grammys sort of judge it. I'm not really sure how they do that category, but I think that stuff is like, you have to remember that it's not like they just started making music last year or 6 months ago. You know, these people have been doing this for a very, very long time, you know. And yeah, man, you know, but that's why you got to love the process too. If you don't love music and you're trying to do this because you want to like quick check, or you think it's gonna like, it's like, that's bad news for you, man. You know, it doesn't work like that. You know what I mean? A lot of people quit because their heart's not really in the right place. And if you don't really do this because you love music, you're going to be disappointed. You're going to be disappointed because there's nothing promised. There's no guarantee that things are going to work out. And the only people that really get to that point are the people that keep going. And the thing that keeps them going is the love for the art form. You know what I mean? It's not some exterior success, you know. So it's never been about that for me. And that's why I'll never stop doing it. It doesn't matter what happens, you know. I can't. I physically can't. I feel like I literally can't. I just rather, yeah, I don't know, bro. You know, but I don't want to get dark, but I don't know. You know what I mean? I really don't know what the hell else I do, you know? So
yeah, fair enough. We had a guest on just recently, and he had actually got to kind of the top of what he could do with his career. Like, he was at the top of his game. He was the lead in his craft, like best in the world actually in his craft. Mm-hmm. And he decided that he had kind of hit the pinnacle, and it was time to jump off the mountain and go a different route. So this is going to be a tough question, but what would the top of the mountain be for you?
Oh man. Top of the mountain, geez. In some ways, I feel like where I'm at, it's so funny because I think the mountain keeps growing. You know what I mean? It's like it's kind of, you reach a certain level. I mean, just being nominated for a Grammy, like I found this out last week and I'm still just like, what? Like it's like I'm saying it, it just doesn't quite feel real. You know, my friends are saying it to me, like, dude, you're a Grammy nominated producer. And I'm like, that's just like what does that mean? Like that's just so weird. There was a time, 5 years ago I couldn't have dreamed of that being the case, but now I'm here and I'm like, okay, all right, what's next? You know what I mean? Top of the mountain though, geez, I mean, I don't know, to be somewhere like, rest in peace Quincy Jones. You know what I mean? Like that's
Yeah.
that's the top of the mountain. I think as a producer, you can't really get more. He's somebody I admire so much because he's just so versatile too. Like he worked with like Frank Sinatra, Michael Jackson, just all over the map in so many different kinds of music. And that's really what I want to do too. Like I want to work in all different kinds of music. I would be very happy one day if I can be like, oh, I made hits with J. Cole and with like Taylor Swift and with like, I don't know, whoever's today's Frank Sinatra, whatever, you know what I mean? But like just really eclectic and like a lot of different music. Cause for me, it's about the music. It's not about like how many records. I don't care about being like selling the most records or having the most Grammys. I don't really believe that like, awards or even music is not about that. I just want to make as much dope music as possible with as many dope people and just like hopefully affect people in a really positive way and hopefully also just inspire other people that like they can do it. You know what I mean? Like I hope that I can inspire people, especially like from where I'm from, that like it's possible, where like, yo, I'm just a kid from Canada, man, who started playing guitar in his bedroom, like you think I ever thought like J. Cole, like sometimes I think it's hilarious, like he's like, I'm like, why is J. Cole like, you know, messing with this white boy guitar player from Canada, it's just like, but he likes what I do, it's like, hey, cool. And I'm just like, I try to make the best of it,
Yeah.
but the top of the mountain, yeah, I don't know, man. It's one of those things where, again, you can't put like a number of records or a number of Grammys or a number of money because that's just infinite. Those things, they never end,
Yep.
And so I don't think that that's gonna be like what, once you won one Grammy, what's the difference? You won 20, you know what I mean? Part of right now I'm trying to savor this moment with this nomination because I'm like, okay, I'm only gonna get nominated for the first time once.
Yeah.
So
Arguably that's better than the 20. Right?
argue
Yeah.
probably,
Yeah.
and let's hope that 20 years from now I'm looking back on my 20 Grammys and I'm probably going to fondly remember that first one, whether we win or
Yeah.
not. It's besides the point. It's like that feeling of like, oh man, like I actually am like Grammy nominated for the first time. Like, holy crap. Like the child, the teenager version of me would be so stoked for me right now, and that is like, that makes me happy. That's fulfilling. But honestly, I also love mentoring people. I love tutoring people. I love seeing people reach their full potential and like helping other people. So the same way T minus really helped me and like really put me on and like believed in me and, like just put me in situations where I was able to shine. I want to do that for other people. You know what I mean? I really would love to do that with other producers and people I believe in, give them a shot. And, I know he like enjoys kind of seeing me win, like getting my first big wins like this, because he's sort of like, oh, I remember that, and when you've done it as long as him, it's like, oh, another Grammy nomination, whatever, another platinum record, it's like he's kind of immune to that to some degree, like, which is one of the things that I thought was interesting about getting to know him. Is just like, you go to this guy's house, he's no plaques anywhere. he could have his entire house covered in plaques of platinum records and whatever, but there's none. Like he's just past that. He doesn't care, and he's really about the music. And the thing that he enjoys the most is making great music with people that are great at music. And we have that relationship where he just like believes in me musically, and we have a great kind of musical chemistry. And who was I when I met him? I was just some dude that played guitar, lived in New York, and he just decided to give me a shot because he just liked what I do. And I want to do that for people. To me, that's really dope. Like you're changing lives. You know what I mean? That's like real tangible stuff, man. It's not like awards and, sure, I want to win a bunch of Grammys. Sure, of course, everyone does in this industry, but it's like, I don't think that that's like, when I have 10 Grammys, then I'll be at peace, like, it's like, no, then you'll want 11, then you'll want 12. You know what I mean? It's a moving goalpost, right? So I just think it's not about that. It's about like changing lives. That to me is like the thing that inspires me. If I can help other people, inspire other people, I try to do this with my students, get them excited, get them motivated, get them to believe in themselves. Like we were talking about, get them to bet on themselves. I had a student who told me, we have these kind of conversations in our lessons, and he was like, man, nobody tells me the shit you tell me in our lessons. And I was like, that's sad, unfortunately, but like, I'm also glad that I can be that person for you, because I'm the only person maybe in his life telling him like, no, dude, like you can do this. You're good at this. And like, you got to believe in yourself, and you can, you can do it. And to me, that stuff is like way deeper than any like awards or money or whatever, success, like material success is just like, yeah, I don't know, man. One day we're all going to die. You know what I mean? Like, that's not to be dark, but really, like, I just think all that you can literally, like, I feel like that's like the great equalizer, where it's just like, I always try to remind myself of this, and it sounds dark, but to me, it's not a dark thing at all. It's just like, yeah, it helps you keep things in perspective. You know what I mean? When I start thinking something is so important, then I remember, you know what, man? That's probably not that big a deal, because I'm going to die one day. You know what I mean? And all of a sudden it's like, oh yeah, you know what? Like it's all good, So, yeah, man, I don't know. That's what helps me keep perspective. And that to me, if I can help people, that would be really like the best thing, Yeah.
You're kind of getting into stoicism a little bit, talking about,
I'm a big fan. I'm a big fan. Yeah.
Yeah, me too. Yeah. I mean, we are all going to die. So does it really matter if you make that meeting?
That's
at
what
10
I'm like, man, you got
Tuesday?
Exactly. You know what I mean? It's like, you got one life, man. Like, what are you going to spend it doing? You have this amazing opportunity, like this, I think to myself, man, I think about where I've gotten and how far I want to go still. And I'm like, imagine if I had denied myself. Like,
yeah,
I very well could have. I could have just decided to like stay in Ottawa and like work for the government or whatever, do the thing, which again, totally fine if that's your lane. But if you're somebody like me, would have been soul crushing. And what, I would have never known what I was truly capable of. You know what I mean? I still feel like I'm very much realizing that potential as we speak, but it's like, I would probably be seriously depressed, and I'd be doing, well, I guess I'd be doing music on the side or something. I don't know, but I wouldn't be fulfilled like I am now, where I feel like I'm just like, I'm really happy that every day, regardless of whatever happens in my life, other personal challenges and things, like I know I have my purpose, I have my thing, which is music. It's making music. It's, whatever, doing music in all the ways that I do it. And that is the thing that no matter what happens, it's like, I know I have that. And I'm super, super glad that I have something like that in my life that I really care about, because it helps you get through a lot of the other ups and downs that come and go,
Yeah, absolutely. I always found when I was in that world, because I did that, I worked in the corporate world, but then I was doing my stuff on the side. I was doing the film video stuff on the side. And what I found when I was in that corporate world, I've talked about this before on this show, but I actually found it riskier working in that environment because there was someone else in control of everything, right? They're in control of your paycheck. They're in control of the goals they set that you have to hit. They're in control of whether they hire, fire, keep you on, all that stuff. They're in control if they want to send you to another branch. They're in control if they want to send you to another office. And for me, doing my own thing, I was taking back that control, and I actually find less risk in that.
Absolutely.
A lot of people going into business, they find more risk in that. I find it, I don't know, if something's not going right, it's just on me to make it happen. So
absolutely, man, I couldn't agree more. It's one of those things too. I think, sometimes I have friends who are in the corporate world, and they kind of like, man, like, how do you do this thing? You're like freelancing and like teaching and, producing and doing gigs, and like, how do money is up and down or whatever. I'm like, yeah, but like you're saying, I can't get fired. Like, if one of my students drops off, that's one student. That's not all my students. You know what I mean? And that's it's highly unlikely that all of my students are all going to quit at the same time, right? Or that I'm never going to get called for another gig or no more. You know what I mean? Production stuff is like it's since I have my foot in kind of these different lanes, I'm able to sort of, if something does go wrong, I still have other things, whereas going back to that Jim Carrey thing, it's like his dad, just got screwed over, like, just because, like you said, it was out of his hands, and it's like really comes down to like just believing in yourself, putting in a lot of work. I mean, I'm obsessed with music. Like, anyone who knows you knows, like, I'm obsessed. You know what I mean? It's like, it's an addiction. So that's what allows me to work so hard, because I love it so much. I can work 12 hours. I can work 16 hours in the studio, and I'll be tired, but it's like a good feeling. It's like a rewarding tired, like, oof, man, we did some shit today. You know what I mean? Like, I go to sleep like a baby. You know what I mean? Like, that's worth it to me. You know what I mean? Whereas you could do, 5 hours. I used to work. The only other job I ever had that was not music was when I was in between years at McGill, and I was working at this call center. That was another big motivator for me, to be honest, that experience. Because I was like, bro, 5 hours, man, 5 hours. And it felt like a week, man. Like, it was like, I would be sitting there. Hi, this is Steve from Elemental Data Collection calling. We're calling about packaged ice. What color of bag? I'm dead ass. This is some of the questions we ask. Like, what color would you like your packaged ice in? And people are like, I don't fucking care. Like, why are you calling me about this? And I'm like, this is my job. Like, like, it's like, that shit was depressing as hell. You know what I mean? So, you know what I mean? It's like, when you do a job like that, when you're 20, you're like, I'm never going to fucking allow myself to get to, because there are people working there, who are, 20 years older than me doing this. And I'm like, how do you do this? Like, I don't want this to be me. And sometimes I feel bad saying that, like, somebody else's situation is a motivation for me to, like, not be like that. But I don't know. It is what it is. You know what I mean? And I just kind of knew that, at least for me, I was like, I can't be in this situation. Like, this is like, I can't just do something I don't care about, because 5 hours feels like forever. Meanwhile, if I'm doing music, even when I'm teaching and stuff, I'll teach 5 hours. I taught 5 hours today.
Well, and what you were talking about like affecting change with people on Instagram, like someone that was reaching out to you, Josh and I are finding that with this show. Like, Josh puts out a lot of clips, and we do a lot of like kind of inspirational stuff, or talk about our own stories and like personal growth and self-development and all that kind of stuff. And we're starting to get comments or people reaching out saying, hey, this really resonated with me, and thank you, and that kind of stuff. And I don't know.
It's a great feeling, man. Right?
Isn't
it the best?
All the reason to do this.
It's so rewarding when you're like having a positive impact on somebody else, or I love when young producers send me messages about, like, because I'm not like T-, you know what I mean? Like, I'm not a big producer. You know what I mean? I'm on my way. I'm on the, I think of myself as like, I'm coming up, you know what I mean? This is like the first year that I've had some real successes in the music industry. And I think it's just inspiring for people to see like somebody starting out and somebody kind of like starting to make it happen. You know what I mean? Whereas it's like, of course, you know, they're inspired by guys like T minus too, but when you can kind of see the journey from the beginning a little bit, I don't know. It's just, it's definitely, it's a good feeling to get messages from people. And like I said, whether it's music or not, I would like to like, hopefully try to inspire people to just do the things that they're really passionate about, you know, because I think like as far as I know, you only got one life. So, and I believe, you know, maybe this is like a little bit of my dreamer mentality, like optimistic, but I believe everybody has like a thing, you know what I mean? Everybody has something that they are really good at, you know? And I think it's kind of like, I feel like it's kind of your duty to like figure out what that is, because that's how you're going to best contribute to society and like best benefit mankind. I'm getting like meta again, you know, but like,
right.
but you know what I mean? Like, it's like, and if we all did that, I think we're in an interesting place when it comes to like AI and stuff, because I think like AI is going to eventually take over all these sort of menial tasks of like repetitive tasks that we've hired people to do for decades. And now all these people are going to be out of a job. So what do? Now there's going to have to be some sort of shift in society where there's, I don't know, some sort of universal basic income that allows people to live, but then also allows people to explore maybe the things that only human beings are capable of doing, like creativity, really. I mean, I know AI is like making music and stuff, but you know what I mean? There's a lot of things that
And
AI
film.
will, yeah, and film
And
and all
film.
kinds. I mean, it's insane. It's a whole crazy world. But I do think we're heading towards an interesting point where like the world is going to open up, where all this stuff is going to be automatic. So now what are all these people going to do? And then
Yeah.
it's going to create this, maybe, again, I don't want to, you know, I don't know what's going to happen, but it might create this kind of revolution, so to speak, where people have to kind of look within themselves like, okay, well, now I'm not just working a job just to survive.
Yeah.
So they got to look inwards. Okay, what do I actually want to do? You know what I mean? What am I actually interested in? What am I actually good at? You know,
Yeah.
and I want to see more of that. You know, I want to see, that's what interests me. You know, all my favorite people are people like who have a thing. It's like, what's your thing, man? You know, what are you? And sometimes it could be the most random thing, but they're super into it. You know, and it's inspiring. Like I get excited hearing people talk about stuff they're passionate about. You know, it's just cool. I got really into coffee recently and like dialing in espresso. Like, it's great. I know it's so random, but seriously, it's crazy, man. It's a whole world. Like, it's insane. You go on YouTube, there's entire channels dedicated to like
Yeah.
espresso and these
I've
guys,
seen them.
right? Like James Hoffman and these guys who were like, oh, I mentioned James Hoffman to like my coffee friends, and they're like, oh, James Hoffman, that's the GOAT. You know what I mean? You're talking about Michael Jordan. You know what I mean? It's so crazy. It's like this whole world that they're like a part of. And I'm like, damn. And they're talking about the grinders and the burrs and the grinders and these tools to like distribute the espresso. It's this crazy whole, I'm like, oh my God, this is like music, man. This is like guitar. You got strings and different guitars and pickups and amplifiers and, you know, musical equipment. It's like, it's a whole crazy rabbit hole. And I feel like you could pretty much do this with anything. You know what I mean? Like there's no limit to like what you could be passionate about and how deep you can dive into it. The only thing that's stopping you is you know what I mean? So just try to figure out the thing that you love and do it. Like, what's better than that in life, man? Like, you're gonna have disappointments. You might get sick, you might get divorced, you're gonna probably go through some breakups, you know, and shit that's gonna fuck you up. Like, but at least like you have that thing, you know what I mean? Nobody can take that from you. You know what I mean? For me, that's like that's the other thing is, you know, you go through other personal hardships in life. It can be really hard, man, but thank God I had music through all those things, you know. That was like my guiding light no matter what, you know. And I think it's something I'm very grateful for, and I really wish everybody could have something like that and could experience, experience that, So,
You've
anyways,
kind of answered. There's a question that I always see people asking, and it's like, what's the meaning of life? But for you, you've kind of found the meaning of your life. And I think of a lot more people in the world just looked for the meaning of their own life
right, yeah,
versus sort of the abstract meaning of life.
yeah.
We'd live in a much better world, but yeah, people just don't seem to find that for some
How
reason.
can you say there's like an objective meaning of life that would somehow apply to all of us? It's just kind of absurd when you think about it. We're so
Hmm.
different, and we all have different, backgrounds and different ideas, and different pros and cons about ourselves, and that's what makes us amazing. I think, I suck at a lot of things. Like, I'm bad at most things. I'm just really good at music. That's like my thing. You know what I mean? I can't cook. Like, I can't, you know what I mean? Like, it's just like, some people are really good at, I don't know, whatever, dialing in espresso, whatever it is. Like, there's all kinds of people in the world, but that's what makes it interesting. You know what I mean? That's what makes it cool. I went to Colombia earlier this year, and like, you see people on the street making like jewelry and these things, and some of these things are like, it's insanely detailed, man. It's crazy. Or they're like carving, stuff into wood. It's amazing. I'm like, man, I'm like so not a handy guy. Like, the idea of like, yeah, man, I can barely use a hammer, you know what I mean? But it's like, they're carving these things out of wood and making these ornate, like detailed, jars and all kinds of stuff. I was just like, this is amazing. And it's such a different skill set that like, I just don't have, but I think that's what makes the world an interesting place, man. It's just this giant tapestry of people. And I hate to see people throw away, um, their potential because they think they can't make it work, or because they think that like it's too risky, or like, what if it doesn't work, or that fear gets the best of them, and it's sometimes it's funny, it's funny, this gets into like, it's so interesting, but like, because I grew up pretty middle class, I feel like it almost makes it worse, because when you grow up very middle class, you're used to this certain level of comfort where it's like you don't want to leave that.
Yeah.
Sometimes you see a lot of these people who become very successful, they grew up with nothing. And it's because in a way they like have nothing to lose. You know what I mean? So they're just going for it. Like, you know what I mean? It's like, they have to, in a way. You know what I'm saying? And there's something really powerful in that. It's not surprising to me that a lot of those people make it so far. Because if you have that fallback, or you have that kind of feeling of like, oh, I could always just kind of, you might not work as hard. You know what I mean? And even though I'm grateful that I didn't have to, I grew up, my parents are teachers, and I grew up quite comfortable, and I recognize I have a lot of like advantages and privilege that a lot of people don't have. When it came to music, I was always very like, I gotta go,
Yeah.
like it's like I'm gonna die if it doesn't work. Like, that has to be the
You're
intensity.
burning the boats.
Yeah, man. Burning the boats.
Burning the
Exactly.
boats.
Burning the boats. There's no going back. You know what I mean? And I don't think I would be like in the position I'm in now if I hadn't had that mindset. You know what I mean? I think I could have very easily just chilled in Ottawa, been teaching guitar, which is cool too, but I'm glad that's not what I did, so.
Nice.
Could have been. What's the quote from Fight Club, Corey? The things you own end up owning you.
Oh,
Something like
yeah.
that.
Yeah.
I don't know. Some of my friends think I just like hate corporate, like everything corporate. You know what I mean? Like, I think it's just like, it's just Kurt Cobain, like, kind of punk. Cause I grew up playing punk, and like, there's a bit of this like, fuck you to like the system, which to be honest, I kind of love, and
We both hate it too, so
Yeah.
we're right.
right.
There.
It's just, I just
Very good
just
company.
like it. You know what I mean? It's just, I just think like, yeah, fuck the system. Like, yeah, why the hell do I have to, why is there this prescribed way that I need to like live life, and like, oh, you got to go to college, and you got to like get a degree, and you got to have get married and have a kid, and da da da. It's like, life does not happen the way you plan it. You know what I mean? You cannot control every aspect of your life. You don't know what's going to happen. I don't know about you guys, but when I'm on my deathbed, I want to be like, yo, like I fucking lived. I fucking did this music shit and that shit was dope, you know? And you know what I mean? And I'm glad I got to do all these things and have these experiences. And maybe it wasn't all roses all the time, but I lived my life the way I wanted to, you know what I mean? And that's something that I think is there's nothing more important than that, you know, being true to
You have
yourself.
you have the chance to do something really funny at the end of your life on your deathbed. Just be like, guys, I got one more beat. and then just
that's
it.
Just yo, but you know, one of my it's so crazy that you say that because one of my biggest inspirations for getting into production is Jay Dilla. Jay Dilla, who, if you're not familiar, he was a legendary hip hop producer from Detroit. He was really active in like the late '90s, early 2000s. Did a lot of stuff with a lot of people in that. He had this group called Slum Village, but he also worked with like Erykah Badu and Tribe Called Quest and like just a bunch of De La Soul, I think, and also all these big '90s artists, right? And his beats are just so amazing to me. They're so musical. He pulls a lot from jazz and stuff like this, and he'll sample like a lot of old jazz records and things. That was the stuff that first got me interested in production. Now, Dilla actually passed away when he was like 32 from lupus. Really young, younger than I am now, which is really crazy. And he was making beats on his deathbed, man. The beat machine. There's pictures of him, like, you know, with this beat machine. Like that to me is like, that's inspiration, you know. And to be honest, my producer name mostly comes from my last name, Billa. But since Dilla was such a big influence on me, it's a little bit of a nod to that hat to like Dilla, Billa, you know, it's this kind of thing. And
then you got the J and the other.
Yeah, it's just the joints was just because like I started making beats and my friends are like, oh, these are like your joints, like Billa Joints. It just kind of like, again, it's very organic. It wasn't like I was like, oh, this is gonna be my producer name. Like it just sort of, and then I was like, cool, if you look up Billa Joints, I come up on Google. Like there's nothing else really. So that's kind of good. You know what I mean? Because it's easy to, you know, get lost in the sauce nowadays if you don't have a unique name. So
sure.
Yeah, but shout out Jay Dilla, man. He's one of the GOATs, one of my biggest inspirations in all of music, and a guy who was truly like, I want to go out like that, man. Making music on my deathbed, like that's the fucking way to go, you know.
That's awesome.
Yeah. Yeah, man.
So Billa, what do you hope that people are going to get out of this episode?
I know like I'm being interviewed, but it's not about me really. I think it's about like believing in yourself, like you said, betting on yourself, and about following that intuition. You know what I mean? I hope that people will tap into that because I think that we all have it. It's just up to us whether we choose to listen to it or ignore it. And I think that if you ignore it for a long time, it's going to start eating away at you in other ways. It's going to start showing. It doesn't like it's not like there's no consequences. You know what I mean? It's a real thing, you know, and it's there. And if you ignore it long enough, you're going to start not feeling like yourself. I figure you're going to start feeling like you're denying a part of yourself, like you're not being honest about who you are. You know what I mean? And ultimately, I just think it comes down to that, like being honest about who you are. Like I want to know when I meet people, I want to know like, our society is so built on people trying to fit in, and like I have no interest in fitting in. Like I don't want to fit in. I don't want to, you know, I want to stand out. And I think everyone has the capacity to stand out in their own way, you know. It doesn't have to be, you know, some big flashy thing or, you know, like becoming famous or rich or whatever. But I think that, you know, you want to listen to that thing. You know, my mom's a teacher. She's a huge inspiration to me, you know, both of my parents, but my mom was like born to be a teacher. You know what I'm saying? Like she won awards for teaching. She's the type of teacher that gets emails from her kids, like from 30 years ago that she used to teach, or like, now I'm a doctor. And like, if it wasn't for you, like I wouldn't, you know what I mean? Like she taught them when they were in third grade. You know, she was like really impacted students. And I think that's where I get this kind of desire to help people and mentor people and help other people reach their full potential. But yeah, it's really all of that, man. Like just being true to yourself, listening to yourself. Don't let society or fear or your parents or your friends or meeting some sort of social, a bar that, everyone's doing it, so I have to do it. Like, don't let that be the thing that dictates your life. Like, make your own path, make the decisions that are right for you. And it might be harder at first. It might be more uncertain, but I'm a firm believer that if you work hard and you follow that thing down the road, it's going to be much more fulfilling. And you're going to feel much more whole as a person. And you're going to live, in my opinion, a much more honest life. And that gives you a sense of peace that like money cannot buy. Like, you cannot have, like I said, like I'm really me, I'm really being true to myself, that to me is like, and that makes everything else that life throws at you so much easier to deal with if you at least have that, But if you wake up every day hating what you have to do every day and hating your life, and man, what happens when the other things hit, because like it's just so much worse, and I always say to myself too, like if I died tomorrow, we talked a lot about dying. I feel like it sounds like I'm so like I'm cool, I promise, but it's like I do think that like the paradox of like thinking about that is that it helps you keep things in perspective. And I actually I'm not afraid of death. I think that like it's the type of thing that if I were to die tomorrow, like that would be tragic, but I know that I've lived a life like true to myself, and like I'm at peace with it. You know what I mean? It would be sad because I feel like I have so much more to achieve, so much more to do, but I'm not mad at how I spent my time here. You know what I mean? Like I'm not upset with that. And to me, that's like, that's when like, that's how I know like I'm on the right path, is like, okay, man, like, regardless of material success, it's just like, I know that I'm at peace with where I'm at, and it goes back to that top 5 regrets, like, so basically, yeah, live a life that's true to you, not a life that other people expect of you or that society expects of you. And that's the ultimate thing, I think, that I'd like people to take from this, so
nice. That's
awesome.
Yeah,
That's what's up.
Billa, where can people find you?
You can find me on Instagram at Billa Joints. BillaJoints.com is my website. I don't really use Facebook or Twitter, X, formerly known as Twitter. Mostly Instagram is where I'm primarily active. So yeah, just at Billa Joints, and yeah.
Awesome. Well, dude, it was a pleasure getting to know you, and thank you so much for doing Second Story. It was awesome.
Dude, thank you guys. I really appreciate it. Thanks for letting me talk your ears off,